All right, guys, we're back with more questions from the listeners here. Again, email us at askus@traptalkpodcast.com. This question's coming in from Mill McKee. And basically, the main question he has for us today is, what do you guys see when you mount the gun, make a move, and pull the trigger? So it sounds like a sight picture type question from Mel. So he's kind of wanting to know what you guys see as you're looking over the gun and moving towards the target.
Well, I'll start. So I look through the beads. I actually use center bead, front bead, line them up, and I look through them, and I put it right on top of the trap house. I look out very short distance and have a I don't look way out in the distance, and that works for me. Now, that doesn't always work for everybody else. Now, I think you had said too that, and looking at the question, he had some eye dominant stuff going on and using all this and that. Well, the best thing to do, if you have an eye dominant, I'll revert back to, my buddy Dusty Klein, who is left eye dominant, past clay target winner when he was 18 years old. Dusty shoots both eyes open, right-handed. He uses the tube sight. So it's a long sight, about 3-4 inches long maybe, and it got a white, sight in there, or you can have a neon, whatever. I'm not a fan of that, because I think that draws your eye to that. But you have that, and then it's blocked out, so your left eye cannot see any part of the sight. It can see the tube, but not into the tube, and then you shoot, and that will help a lot. So I think the one thing people fail to do is just go out and shoot. They get all jested with, okay, I need to look here, and I got to, well, they just, instead of let's just look for the target. So look down the barrel, make sure everything's lined up, get your eyes out at a good distance where you're comfortable and can pick up that target quick. Acquire it, see it, make the move to it, shoot it, fall through.
Yeah. What about you, Zach? What are you seeing?
I think I'm very similar to Rick in regard. The major differences for me is I'm above the gun. So Rick says he looks through the gun. I find, especially at closer distances, like the 16 yards and doubles, I'm, what I can see to be at least 1 inch above the beads with my eyes. And the reason I do that is I feel like if I get down looking through the gun, especially on post 1 and 2, when I get a left-hand angle, I feel like my right eye is obstructed. And I feel like when I'm coming over to it, my left eye starts to take over. So what I do is I bring my right eye up above and I look in that area so that gun's almost out of my face. And everything on the left-hand side, I'm cutting it with my right eye still. So as I move back to the 27-yard line, I will lower that eye hold point where it's much closer to the barrel. But as I get closer, as those targets are jumping out of the house quickly and they're flashing, I want to get my eyes out of that flash zone. I don't want to be sucked down at the trap house because I am on the house, right? So I want that target to come up into my vision, and then the gun's going to stay underneath. And the big thing that I'm focusing on is making sure that I never take the barrel or the rib and put it over the plane of the target. So, wherever that target line is from the house all the way to the angle, all the way to the top of the arc, I'm trying to follow underneath that line all the way through the flight plane until I get to the point of where I break it. So as far as what I see, I mount the gun. I definitely see the beads. I'm definitely closer to the gun. And then my eyes tell me when it's time to call pull because I'm looking out and I almost feel them lock into place. And I'm looking, out, but not too far out. Like Ricky said, it's at 16-yard line. It's pretty much right at the front of the trap house is where I want to look. At 27
I always tell, sorry, Zach. I always tell people that the front stake in front of the house, which is 15 feet, I think, out there. I tell people, try not to get your eyes any further than that because you're defeating the purpose. You're looking out. Now, it is correct that you look out far and you bring your eyes back, everything's clear. But we got to remember that target's going away. So
it's all time, right? It's how much time it takes your
So to add to that though, if my eyes are at the trap house at 16-yard line or a little bit past it, and then my eyes are at the trap house at 27-yard line, I've got to zoom my eyes out a little bit more from the fence than I do at the 16-yard line. I feel like my eyes get a little bit tighter and a little bit farther out. But then once I call pull, very similar to Ricky, I want to get my eyes on the target as soon as possible, and I want to keep my eyes on the target all the way through the shot, ideally not looking back at the gun or aiming. If I'm doing it right, I guess if I was to break it down into relativity, I'm probably seeing 90 to 95% target, and maybe the background I could see a shadow of the gun coming in, but I'm not seeing clear. And in a lot of instruction I've done, a lot of people are like, well, how much gun and how much bird do you see versus bead? And they're like, well, I see 50% bird and 50% bead. And they're like, well, that's a whole lot of gun, right? That's half and half. I want people to at least start at 75 to 80% target if they need some reference point. And eventually the top guys like, Ricky, they're 100% target. I mean, they're not, he knows where that gun is. He's staying locked in. He's using the custom stock. He's using the fact that it's perfectly where he is, and he's just looking at the bird and it's breaking. And when it doesn't break, the downside to that is when it doesn't break, you start to scratch your head and say, well, what the hell's wrong today, right? Because he's not giving it like, oh, well, 3 inches of lead on a hard right or 2 inches of lead on a hard left. That's not happening, guys. It's all happening so fast, his body just makes the shot.
Because at some point, all those mechanics have to fade into the background, right? So you've rehearsed and practiced it so much. So it's hard for us, and I'm going to take the shooter advocate side here of the newer shooter versus you guys. And I would say, when Rick says to me, I look through the beads, my first question is, what does that look like? What does that mean? But then Zach, Zach, you said, hey, I look about an inch over the gun. So it starts to understand, because I think if your eye comes back to the gun, you're in trouble, right?
Yes.
Most important thing is you got to be out there, and depending on your point of impact, your move speed to the bird, how much birds you see when you take the target, all those are just variables, right?
Well, and John, just like you said, you don't understand this. Like I look through the beads, Zach looks over it. Now, when you say don't let your eyes go back to the beads, I feel, this is just my opinion, when you're looking over something and you're trying to, say, shoot off the end of the barrel or keep your eyes away from it, when that barrel comes into play, your eye automatically goes right to it.
Versus it being there the whole time.
I'm looking through it, the target comes out. I see it, the gun just goes right through it. So it's a better way.
That works really well at the 27, because I feel like you have to be a little bit more into that sight picture, a little bit tighter, because you don't want to be moving the gun up. You need to be moving these kind of, horizontal moves. But I think maybe what Zach is saying, when you're closer up on the 16, that little bit of space, make sure you're not blocked, because you're about to do a little bit more gun movement, right?
Well, and that's why I'm on the house. So no matter, I'm down low, the target, I never have anything blocked.
Just always coming up above.
I always see the target. Yeah. And that's,
and I would say through the beads is pretty much when I'm shooting handicap. I mean, because it's really low. Because if you look very high above the gun at 27-yard line, you're going to come back and it's going to be nasty. And that's not good. But there's a sweet spot where your eyes feel comfortable. And everybody has a different sweet spot. It's based on how fast you move the gun. It's based on how your eyes react. That's going to change. And, whatever works for you, try to stick with it. And the other thing I would say is light does affect it. So if I've got a really, really, really bright day, visibility is really, really good, I can usually get my eyes a little bit higher. If the visibility is really, really low and really, really dark, and I have a tendency to look back for the gun, I have to get my eyes a lot lower. So I don't think there's like any consistent, has to be this way every time. I think you have to look at your brakes and you have to feel how, a target's flashing you. Sometimes if I'm too low on that first target in singles with my eyes and it flashes me and I throw the gun at it, I'm like, oh crap. And I raise my eyes just a little bit. I'm constantly dialing it into whatever gives me the smoke ball. So, I mean, that. And now Ricky,
he's dialing a lot.
I'm dialing a lot. Dialing a lot.
Well, those are great answers for Mel. So Mel, send us follow-up questions if you've got more. But I think the big takeaway here is that there's definitely variables here, where you're holding your gun, where you're looking, are you at handicap, are you shooting singles, and that's the joy of trap shooting, right? You've got to kind of put all these pieces together.
That's the one thing. Absolutely, and that's one of the things when I teach. I don't tell everybody, got to do it exactly like I do. I watch everybody and go, I'm watching you, and it looks like if you move that gun down and it's a matter of inches. There you go. You see it much better this way, from what I could tell. And I tell that. People go, well, how do you do that? Through my eyes. I can tell how you move the gun. Yeah, and that's what I'm watching.
Right.
I'm watching that part. So
yeah. For sure. All right. Well, thanks again to Mel. And again, everyone, send your questions to askus@traptalkpodcast.com, and we'll get these two guys to answer them for you. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Absolutely.